it's a girl Erin. Well, I'm trying out a new place to put my phone. Hopefully it stays there. Also, I know that because the audio is pretty crap when I do these in-car recordings, and for many people it might not actually be watchable. So yeah, I just wanted you to know that I know that. I'm not doing this because I think it's got great audio quality and everyone's going to love listening to it. I'm doing it because I'm in the car anyway. I have ideas and I can always go back and do a transcript of the stuff I said, put it into article format, or turn it into a script for another video that I do where I have better equipment and stuff. If you want the audio to get better right now, like, I don't know, maybe there's like a mic that can go on a phone that you want to buy me or something, but otherwise, sorry, it's fine if you got linked to this and it's like, no, I can't handle this, just bail, it's fine. But if anyone is actually interested in what I have to say and can also bear the bad quality, it's for you. Otherwise, it's for me later on to go back and be like, cool, you know, like, because the thing is, like, I am either not going to make content or I'm going to make content like this for now. So I chose to make content even though I know not everyone's going to enjoy it. So yeah, anyway, talking about today is, I wanted to give you an example of how definitions and what is thought of as accurate changes over time. And so I'm going to give you the example of people looking up at the stars and, you know, with, I guess, starting off by their own sight, and then as sort of telescopes and stuff got better, they were able to look further in higher resolution and come to even better understandings of the way the solar system works. And that I'm making the case in every different field of study, in any topic where people are trying to understand stuff or trying to figure things out. In every field of study, this type of thing is going to happen. You're going to start off with limited understanding, limited ability to measure things, and a limited perspective. And then as you know, your ability to measure things gets better, as your understanding of things get better, you make more and more discoveries, and things that you might have thought to be true to start off with end up not being true anymore. We can take almost like an everyday example of if you've ever heard of the phrase a shooting star. Now, sure, I guess certain stars might be thought of as shooting, like if a star is getting pulled in by a black hole, gets really close to it, but doesn't go into it, and then gains a whole ton of speed and shoots out the other side. Sure, maybe you can say that's a shooting star. But the phrase and what people have meant originally when they talked about it, they were talking about things that we can actually see with our human eyes, and they called them shooting stars because it looked like a pinprick of light, the same as all the other stars, except it was moving, or had a trail, and was shooting in that way. Now, with our modern understanding, modern equipment and telescopes, etc., we know that things that we call shooting stars aren't stars at all. It's comets, meteors, or meteorites, or asteroids. Like, those are like your only options, really. You know, if a star really did shoot into our atmosphere, we'd all die. So, but when you say shooting star, you know, it's a phrase, and people get the rough idea. But when you start getting into actual astronomy, and you actually start trying to determine like what the definitions of a star is, then you got to abandon the casual usage of the word, and you got to get more specific, because otherwise the people who know the specifics, or people who have the equipment to look at the specifics, aren't going to know what you're talking about. They're going to be like, what do you mean there's a star going through the upper atmosphere? That makes no sense. So you have to use the more specific understanding and definition. So when people started off looking at the stars and started off only like using like their own sight, basically, they would have looked at like a planet, they would have looked at a star, a galaxy, and even a comet, and thought that these were all stars. They would have called them all stars, you know. There's like, they would have called things like, oh, at night there's the moon and the stars. Like, that's all that they could tell, because it was just a prick of light that they couldn't tell one apart from the other. Then as telescopes developed and stuff, and people started to look at these, you know, they noticed, well, I guess maybe even before then, they might have noticed that certain stars, obviously there was like stars that repeat, but they might have noticed some that moves faster than others. But like when they got hold of like better telescopes and stuff, and they looked even closer, and they were like, okay, this is definitely not a star, this is a planet. Like, I guess, you know, they could have then started to map the orbits of these planets and see that they were moving, you know, sort of around the sun, and were a lot closer to us than you know, like the distant stars and galaxies and stuff. And in fact, if I'm not mistaken, the closest star to us other than the sun is something like a light year away or something. So it's like light takes a year to get from there to us. So it's like really far away. That's why it looks like a pinprick and not as big as our sun does. But I mean, the concept of like galaxies and stuff, you know, would have still been not really something people knew about. Like, they wouldn't have known that some of the stars they were looking at were actually galaxies. And only once telescopes got even better were we able to tell that they were clusters of like millions of stars rather than just one star. Because the galaxy is so far away, when you look at it with the naked eye or weak ass telescopes, it looks like it's only one star. And when you zoom in with your good telescopes, you're like, oh crap, there's like millions of stars all in this one group, and that's a galaxy. So like, basically that's like a rough analogy of how the better you understand things, you know, and then like you can tell things apart. Like if you see you know, if you see some lights up there and you want to tell whether it's like an asteroid or a star or whatever, then you can like look at how bright it is, look at how fast it's moving, and I guess they also like, yeah, they tell by the brightness, and then they can also like use like spectroscopy, which is basically the spectrum of the light as it's coming towards us. It like, certain molecules absorb different frequencies of light, and if you look at which frequencies of light are missing from the spectrum, you can tell like what that light bounced off of or traveled through or whatever. Anyway, so if we're talking about politics now, I've been on this topic for a while, and I'm still on it because I'm still waiting for people to be like, either have like a really good point against what I'm saying, or for it to feel like people actually get what I'm saying. So it's like, maybe I'm like really bad at explaining stuff, or maybe like no one's really paying enough attention to get the whole logic. I don't know. But anyway, it doesn't really feel like people get what I'm saying yet. So yeah, that's why I'm still on it. So like when we talk about socialism, right now, there's a lot of confusion about what the definition of socialism is. And part of the problem is that in the most casual sense of the word, all socialism means is when the economy is puts social need above capital. When social need is the ism of your economy, not capital being the ism of your economy. So basically, sorry, traffic is really bad today. So basically, yeah, the most casual use of the word socialism. Hey, I just realized if I had an electric car, the audio would be better. So go fund my Patreon and make me rich. No, not rich, but help me with my debt so I can get an electric car one day. Anyway, yeah, so if you look at, like, for example, like, we can have a look at someone like Bernie Sanders, who calls himself a socialist, but what he wants is a capitalist economy that is regulated and hopefully corruption free enough to be helpful to the people who participate in it, more so than regulate capitalism of today. So when you compare the economy that Bernie Sanders is advocating for to the one that exists for most people in the world today, it's true to say that it is better at meeting social needs. Capital, or you can like have a shortcut of like thinking what suits people who have a lot of stuff. So Bernie's style of economy helps people who have a lot of stuff less than today, and it helps people who have no stuff more than today's economy. So if we were to draw a line, basically, if today is over here, Bernie's economy is over there. If that way is towards the good of society and that way is toward the good of people who have a lot of stuff. So you could, using the casual term of the word, call Bernie's type of economy socialist, but only in the most casual sense of the word. Like, look, a shooting star, like, okay, that's not really a star. It's like, look, Bernie's economy is socialist. Like, okay, it's not really socialist. It just looks like it when you're so far away that you can't tell the difference. But as we get closer and we can zoom in and look at the properties of such an economy and look at how it works and how it would end up affecting people, what patterns it has, etc., then we start seeing that it looks a whole lot more like an asteroid, you know. It looks a whole lot more like something that isn't actually a star. It's not really socialism. So people looked at these ideas of an economy that's better for social need than for people who have a lot of stuff. They looked at that concept and said, well, let's try and come up with a different way of doing the economy, a way that will meet social need more than today. And so they tried to see what are the things today that are against social need. Let's get rid of them and do something better instead. And so the first thing that they were, so this is like, if you're trying to tell an asteroid apart from a star, maybe you'd be like, okay, a star is something that is emitting its own light, and an asteroid is something that only reflects light or lights up when it's burning through the atmosphere, but in space it doesn't generate its own light. It's not having its own explosion type stuff going on. And and you're like, cool, now we can tell what is a star or what isn't a star better. And so basically the first thing that people realize to try and tell what in society is needed and what isn't is to say, okay, well, who owns things like factories and stuff? Like, the people right now who are rich, they get richer, well, they got where they're rich, they got to where they are, but they get even more rich by having control over stuff that is able to generate more money. Whether that's owning like a bunch of property that they can rent out, or whether it's a factory or a farm, if they have ownership of it, if they get to say what happens on it and they can control it, then all they need to do is like use it in such a way that makes them more money. So they could have a farmland and be like, you know what, I'm gonna act like I don't own it and let everyone else have their way with it, and it can be up to public. Now that is obviously superficial, because if they really genuinely wanted to give that land to the service of the public good, then they would, it's difficult to say how they would do that today because of the entire way how the state controls property. So if you give it to the state, you're not really giving it to the public, because then the state can give it to someone else or use it for something that isn't in the public's good. The idea that the state works in the interests of the public is a myth. It actually works in the interest of the people who own a bunch of stuff. And specifically because it gets to say whether something belongs to someone or not. And but so there was this concept called the commons, where it was like the public owned it, not the state and not an individual person. But we don't really have that around today. There's not really any idea of the commons anymore. But anyway, so they thought, well, maybe if we did an economy where the people who worked on a farm, worked in a factory, or who lived in a house, maybe they get control over where it is. So if it's 10 of you working on a farm, all 10 of you get to have control, and you do it like democratically. In my opinion, you should do it via consensus, but some people might say you can do it via voting and stuff. But consensus is when you get everyone to agree, because in my opinion, there's always a best thing to do. So you just need to figure out what it is, explain it to everyone, and get everyone to agree with it. And if you can't do that, for me, that indicates you have a problem in your teamwork. You have a problem in your social cohesion, that you aren't able to collectively problem solve. Like if you are playing like a multiplayer game and everyone on your team is cooperating, you have a way better chance of winning the game than if everyone is doing their own plan. So, you know, you got to get everyone on board and work as a team. Then you can have like a consensus where everyone's happy and stuff. Anyway, so they thought that if they just made that change, where they could just let the workers be the ones who, you know, the workers of whatever thing, be the ones who get to control and decide what happens. Now, they'll still make stuff, sell it, get like money for it, whatever, and then they'll use the money to pay for whatever it is they want. So that whole thing still happens, but they get to decide in their particular productive unit what happens, what do they make, etc. So people thought that, initially they thought that was a good way to tell socialism and capitalism apart, because they hadn't thought of anything like that before, like working like that, not in the elite intellectual circles. Of course, a lot of people have lived like that for a long time. and a lot of people in history lived like that. But in terms of the people who actually have like capital, they social or otherwise, they thought this was a new idea. And so back then, when they first thought of it, they would have called this new economy socialist, because they would have been like, hey look, it's more in the interests of society, of the social need, than it is people who have a lot of stuff, the rich, the capitalist class. So, you know, it's socialist, it's for the social good. Look, the people own the means of production, etc. But as our ability to understand things improved, as our ability to measure things improved, and knowledge increased, it became evident that that wasn't a good enough change on its own. That even if you made that change, you would still end up in a society that didn't really end up elevating social need above those who have a lot of stuff. So think of, like, you know, if your worker controlled factory making biscuits, you needed to sell like 1,000 biscuits a week so that everyone would have enough money left to live or whatever. If somebody else, like next door to you, started making biscuits, and maybe their biscuits were a little bit tasty, or maybe they were like, well, we're not going to use animal products in our biscuits, or they had something about their biscuits that made them more appealing to people than yours, then they might start selling more biscuits than you, and maybe you only sell 500 biscuits, and everyone else you know, that's making biscuits with you has to take half the regular salary, and the people who had the more appealing biscuits, they maybe were able to give people double their regular salary because they sold so many biscuits. And, you know, allow that type of thing to continue for X number of years or decades, and the people with the better biscuits are rolling in prosperity, and the people with the shitty biscuits might go out of business. And that is not really in the social need, because society needs those people to still have work. And to be honest, society just needs people to have the biscuits they want. It doesn't really need there to be this competition between people. They could have shared knowledge. Why are your biscuits so cool? Instead of it being a case of fighting over the same people, they could have been like, hey, why don't we just join up and collectivize our two biscuit things? We'll start making biscuits the way you make them, the way people like it, and, you know, together we'll meet the demand. But so yeah, so people realize that, you know, you're still going to end up with inequality. And so what they thought of then was, okay, well, maybe the problem with this is that money is kind of like this abstract thing. You know, you might be able to stockpile money over years and years, and then you have a whole bunch of it, and you can really go and do whatever you want with it. Like, you can go and buy up all the biscuits and nobody else can get, because you've stockpiled your money for so long that you can just go and do that. Or, you know, it allows people, or if you're someone who like is not able to work, like you have some disability or something that makes it that you can't work, well, you sit there not getting an income, not being able to get biscuits, and then the person with a lot of money can have as many as they want, and that's not good for society. There's no meeting of social need there. It's meeting the needs of the people who either already have a lot of stuff or have the ability to get a lot of stuff, and the people who don't already have a lot of stuff and who don't have the ability to get a lot of stuff, it treats them as class. Like it treats them like their needs aren't as important. So they thought, looking up, well, is this, a star or a galaxy type thing? We need better equipment. So examine stuff more and be like, maybe we should make money equal to time worked. So if you work for an hour, then you get a voucher saying that you worked for an hour, and that way we can make sure that everyone has a similar income, because everyone who works the same amount of hours will get the same money from it. So, basically, if you're making biscuits, and so if you're making biscuits, then you would say, okay, it took 10 of us, working, let's say 24 hours a week, because you can set your own working hours, and so you've gone to something a little bit more bearable by the human body, etc. So you work 24 hours a week, so, and there's 10 of you, so that's 240 labor hours a week. And so maybe you've got to sell your biscuits at, if you make 1,000 biscuits a week, you've got to sell them for like 5 labor hours, or wait, like 0.5, I don't know, labor hours or whatever, so that, I don't know, like this kind of nonsense calculations, my brain doesn't do them well, because I'm trying to get my brain into a socialist mode of thinking, and this whole like thing is very capitalist in nature. But basically the point is that the idea of money, instead of it being sort of like a gold coin that can just have its value no matter who has it and can be changed around easily, they would rather use these voucher type things where you could even make sure only the person it's issued to can use it. You could make sure they can't transfer it again. They can only spend it at like a retail store, but they can't just give it to their friend. And like they thought that way, so if you died or whatever, you wouldn't have an inheritance to give to your children, because all of your money would be issued directly to you, non-transferable, etc. They thought this will be how we make the economy meet social need. We'll get rid of the exchangeability and that stockpiling nature of capital and money and stuff. Get rid of that, and it'll meet the social need. But then, our equipment gets better. We can look closer at things, and we start to see like that it isn't actually going far enough yet. It's still, such a thing still doesn't, if we're trying to look at what would be a galaxy or whatever, and you're still looking at something that's a star, like it's not meeting the criteria yet. This is a really, 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 really annoying part of the road, because it moves like a meter at a time, and it's on an uphill. It's freaking annoying. And it's not a robot, it's a stop street, so it's not like you wait a bit and then you go for a bit. No, it's like you go a little bit, then you stop. You go a little bit, then you stop. Ugh. Anyway, so in trying to create an economy that would be good for the social need instead of for the people who already have a lot, they've tried to put these new criteria down, but the problem with that is you're still going to have people who aren't able to labor at all. You're still going to have people who have different levels of needs. Maybe one person requires like, I don't know, 5 grams of like weed a day or something, just to like handle their anxiety. I don't know. And someone else like is totally like chill. They don't need any like medicine or whatever. Like if they're still only able to work X amounts of hours per week or whatever, because one of them has more needs than the other, you still end up with one person having leftover money that they can get like more stuff, whatever. So it's like the idea that like it'll balance out, fairly is mythological thinking, in my opinion. This is so freaking annoying because I can't. Every time I have to go forward a bit, I like breaks my train of thought. It's so much easier to talk when it's like you're just going on the road. Anyway, I warned you about low quality. So now, the point I'm making is that we see now that it is not just workers owning the means of production that's needed to make the economy work for society and the social need. It's not just taking away transferability of money. It's not just making basic necessities free and then luxury items you still need exchange for. None of those things are describing an economy that's good for society, that is based on social need. Because when you have exchange, it is exchange that takes over from the calculations of what to do. So you have a factory and you are making biscuits, and if you're now in this example, biscuits are a luxury, and if you are trying to be good for society but it still requires people to make an exchange to get biscuits, then it's not up to who needs biscuits or not. It's always going to be up to who has the amount of exchange stuff needed to buy whatever you're selling your biscuits for. And you're never going to get it lining up between, well, I magically have exactly the right amount of exchange power I need to meet all of my needs, and not a labor hour more and not a labor hour less. It's never going to match up like that. That isn't logical to think that you would perfectly align like that. You could maybe get like Minority Report level super algorithms predicting like everything everyone will always need up front. If you think it's possible to create such a perfect algorithm, sure, maybe then, but the thing is, all the electricity and whatever, all the calculations and processing power going into those calculations for that thing are wasted because you don't need all that nonsense. You don't need to predict what people need. That's not a self-regulating system, basically. It's a system that is it might be self-regulating on whether you should produce to get more exchange power or not, but it isn't self-regulating towards the social need, because you can't magically make everyone's needs match up to, and the thing is, there's another way to do it. The way you can get something being produced to match up to what people need is you just take away exchange entirely. So with our new telescopes that are able to look even further and look at stars and be like, wow, it's not actually a star, it's a galaxy, okay? With our new technology that's able to examine whether an economy is going to be good for society, is going to meet social need or not, well, we are able to now see that when you have exchange, it obfuscates and basically hides social need. It takes the calculation, so like, let's say 100 people need biscuits, but only 50 of them can afford it. So by making it based on affordability, you are not able to see what the true need is, because it's gatekept by affordability. You can only see how much it's needed based on people who can afford it and who chose that over something else. So it's not about what they need, it's about their affordability and how they choose to spend that affordability. Now, they might try to choose things so that their highest priority needs are what they spend on first, but that is a calculation to conform your needs to the economy. It is not the economy conforming to your needs. If you take away exchange, then you only make stuff that is needed. So you don't make 1,000 biscuits a week or whatever and then sit around trying to sell them and then hopefully everyone buys them and you get paid. You don't do that. If nobody buys your biscuits, then you just stop making more. Like, you just don't keep producing. You don't, because you're not making it to exchange it. You're only making it if it's going to be used. You don't gain anything from making. Like, when it's about exchange, making it, then you're trying to gain something out of that production. When you're giving it away for free, you don't gain anything out of that production. The only thing that is gained is that someone who needed biscuits doesn't need biscuits anymore. And that's really how you can get an economy based on social need. When you take away exchange, you take away markets. That's the only way that you can get the economy to stop focusing on exchange, to stop focusing on affordability, and start focusing on who needs what. If you need biscuits, we'll make them. If you don't need biscuits, we'll stop. So how does it self-regulate then? I said that you don't need to predict everyone's needs. Well, how would a society where everything's being made for free match up and align what's needed to what's made? Well, it's quite simple. You know, if you make biscuits, maybe you keep making them, and then you have, like, you know, I keep using 1,000, so let's say 1,000. You have 1,000 biscuits made, packaged, and sitting on the shelves waiting for people. Now, if nobody comes and asks you for biscuits, now remember, they're free. If nobody wants them for free, there just isn't a need for them. Nobody needs your biscuits. Then you just stop making them. You've made 1,000. That's a decent margin for backup. And then you just stop making more. And that's how production matches need. And then if later on tons of people start wanting biscuits again, and they come in and they start buying them, and you're like, wow, we used to have 1,000, we only have 500 now, let's start making biscuits again. You start making them, you get back up to 1,000, and either it comes back down again and you keep making to go back up. You set that limit where you feel like you've got enough stock in supply, and then you stop at that safe margin. You don't just stockpile endlessly in the hopes that one day you'll cash in, because they're just going to go stale, because it's not, you're not going to offload them. You know, it's either people want them or they don't. And so yeah, you'll stop making when you have a big enough stockpile, and then if people stop taking from your stockpile, then you stop making more. And that way, what people need is aligned to what's made. And if nobody makes biscuits, then your community can be like, yo, we really need biscuits. Is anyone able to make some? Or can anyone learn how to make it? Or what equipment do we need to start making them? And how can we make that equipment? Who knows how to build it? You know, and then when you find the answers to those questions, it's always going to be something that happens for free. The people who are teaching how to bake are teaching for free. The people who are offering to bake are offering to do it for free. The people who are building the ovens or whatever are doing so for free. The people who are farming the ingredients are doing so for free. The people harvesting the ingredients are doing so for free. The people transporting the ingredients to you are doing so for free. And the people transporting what you make to wherever you're delivering to are doing it for free. Everyone is doing it all for free. That's how, it's the only way it works. If people weren't doing it for free, then you wouldn't be able to also do it for free. So it's only because all your ingredients, all your labor, all your education, all your equipment, everything is for free. That's why you're then able to give it for free as well. and then you use your stockpile to make sure you make the right amounts, and then society will balance itself in such a way that the things that are the most in need are going to get the most attention. And it's not going to be, wow, this thing is really cheap to make or easy to make, and it gets you like so much exchange power and reward. Make more of that. Then it's only like the most high margin profitable stuff gets prioritized. When you're making everything for free, it's the stuff that gets prioritized is literally what people want the most. So if people want, for example, PlayStations the most, then fuck it, let's make 7 point whatever billion PlayStations, like, you know. And if we don't have enough resources for all of that, then fuck it, let's go mine some asteroids. Like, you solve your problems. You don't make, oh, we can't afford it, but you really want it, but we can't make it. Whoops. And if it's something that is genuinely, truly unsolvable, then you don't need to then, like, confine your entire economy to affordability just because you don't know what to do with this scarce resource. Like, what if it's like some supercar and like only a few people have the skills to build it or whatever, and even though the knowledge is out there, even though all the component parts are free, there's no intellectual property, and other people are willing to labor, maybe it's just too difficult for them, and maybe because it's a luxury item, all the scientists and the engineers who are focusing on building automation and stuff, they're not interested in automating the making of it or whatever, and so you're just like, crap. Well, you can have a waiting list, you can have a assessment to see like whether it, you know, the people making it can be like, well, we're gonna make them for people who are racers, or we're gonna make them for people who are like retired and want to have fun. Like, they can decide like why they are making it, what need they are meeting, the need of those people, the needs of those people, and then the ones who miss out, well, they can just then make the request like, hey, nobody's making supercars for us, and well, maybe, you know, you do need to start trying to do it yourself. Like, go learn the skill, like go build the robots or do the automation yourself or whatever. Like, there's nothing stopping you, because like the education you want would be free, the place you're staying would be free, the food you're going to eat while you're studying would be free. You can just go learn. Like, if it takes you 20 years to figure out how to do it, and then it takes you 10 more years, like, you can still get, in 30 years, you can still get your supercar. Like, it's not a never gonna happen type thing. Whereas today, based on affordability, for 99.999% of the people, it's a never gonna happen thing. And not because, you know, you don't have enough like time left in your life to learn it, because you can't afford to learn all that. You can't afford to get the component parts. You can't afford to support yourself while studying. You can't afford access to factory space or whatever. It's affordability gatekept, you know. So there's no reason to have it based on exchange. All exchange does is corrupt your economy and turn it against social need, and there's no way to balance it such that affordability matches need. That's basically what it comes down to. Do you want an economy where people who have a lot of stuff get their needs met more than those who don't? Or do you want an economy where it doesn't matter who has a lot of stuff or not? What matters is, what do you actually need and want, and what do people actually want to make? And if, for example, nobody wants to do like garbage disposal, well, everyone's going to have tons of garbage stinking up their house, stinking up their road, and eventually they're going to be like, well, we're stinky trash people now. That's just what it means to be society. We love stinky trash. Yay, let's live in it forever. Or they're going to be like, we have a social need to get rid of this. And either they're going to have to get people to volunteer, or they're going to have to automate it, or get drones, or some solution will become needed, and the people who are sick of living in stinky trash world, they are going to be like, well, instead of spending my time on making a new car, instead of spending my time on building like a new house, instead of spending my time on farming, whatever, like I'm going to go and be the one who takes out the trash, or I'm going to be the one who learns how to build a drone that can carry it away, or I'm going to be the one who designs a system of pipes where your trash can get sucked away and recycled or whatever. Like, you will have incentive to solve it because people won't want it. And so social needs, yes, maybe like it's not something people want to do, but it will get to a point where they want to do it because the alternative will be worse. Living in a stinky trash world is worse than some amounts of people making some amount of effort. And while some people tackle the garbage problem, other people will tackle the food problem, and other people will tackle the whatever problem. And because technology helps us be more effective than just for one person, like one person can farm for many other people, one person can repair the the appliances of many different people. So in that way, we can cover everyone's needs. And all it takes is some problem solving at a social and like community level, not to just be like, well, I'm sure because people want it, then they'll spend money on it, and then if I think I can make a profit, then I'll make it, and that's the way something gets done. And then it's only when it's profitable that it gets done. Rather, it will be, well, what do we actually want our society to look like? What do we have to do to make it look like that? Where do we need to go? What problems need to be solved? And then you solve them. And anyone can solve any problem they want, because there's nothing stopping you. You're not being gatekept out of it. There's no affordability nonsense. I need to solve the garbage problem, and who else wants to solve it? Get together, figure it out,